What's up, YouTube? Tenchi Arizonia, the angry Dracolope of the Jackalope crew here, and today is the 7th of March 2020, Saturday the 7th of March, and well, this afternoon from about 1 o'clock to around 5:45 PM, I was out in the New Forest following up on a story I mentioned to you, the Hanged Man's Tree. So here I have my Write in the Rain notebook and I have some notes in here. Now before I get started, I'm just going to pour myself a drink, some rum, in some nice spoopy shot glasses. I think they're appropriate for this, and yes, this is a brand new bottle, so never tried this rum before. But I think these glasses are highly appropriate for the topic because they are skulls. That'll do, 2 glasses. These are actually slightly bigger than shot glasses, by the way, so 2 of those should last me throughout the entire story time. And I'm going to light up my cigar as well, which I have, which is a Gurkha Extreme. But first, some of my notes on the Hanged Man's Tree. Well, first off, the Hanged Man's Tree, a site in the New Forest, is known for paranormal sightings. Very well known for it, in fact. However, I decided I was going to go back up to the New Forest today to take some notes on it. And yeah, my lighter didn't want to work then. Typical. Always happens when I want to have a nice cigar. So, oh, come on. So, as I said, it's known for paranormal sightings. I'll use the quote sightings here because there's more to it than that. Right, there we go, there's my cigar. Now I can progress. God damn it. Even though I punched it, I still got a bit of tobacco. If that was loose. Okay, now I've got my cigar lit. Let me just put that back in the stand and refer back to my notes. Right, known for paranormal sightings, I already mentioned that, specifically after dark. Secondly, reports of figures, hard to do air quotes, figures clad in male armour that vanish if approached. So yes, that's kind of unusual. So let me give you a bit of background here. The Hanged Man's Tree is a well-known legend in my area, in the New Forest area, to be honest. And it goes pretty much like this. Sometime in the Middle Ages, a soldier was hanged, and every now and then, if you pass that particular tree at certain points during the day, you will hear the faint sounds of this soldier's execution. Now, details vary. Some reports say that the soldier is a World War I soldier. Some reports say that it's a soldier from the Middle Ages. Now, based on the reports I gathered in my notes today of male-clad figures clad in male armour. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to read my notes because even though I have got ample light, my handwriting isn't great. So yeah, even though there are mixed reports, some saying World War I soldier, some saying soldier from the Middle Ages, the reports of figures clad in male armour kind of confirm the latter story. Please don't let my cigar have gone out. Nope, it's not quite evenly lit, so allow me to correct that. That's better. Right, so figures clad in mail. So from that I'm able to conclude that the true legend of this area revolves around the Middle Ages. Next note, should I say, if I can find it. There it is. Sightings of hanged man, apparition confirmed, but not as legend. As legend states. Let me just reread that note. Sightings of hanged man apparition confirmed, but not as the legend states. Meaning, the hanged man in the legends is stated, as I said, to either be in World War I regalia or medieval armour. Legends state he is only hung, but based on the reports I got from a credible source actually, the hanged man is actually disemboweled. Kind of gruesome. And this leads me to my next part, if I can actually find the note again. The candlelight is ample, but... here we are. Credible source, priest, states full details of sightings covered up. Now, this priest is a relatively old priest. I'm not going to mention names here, but he is an old priest. He has been working in a church nearby to the area, in a village nearby the area. I'm not going to name the village again for reasons. I had named the priest. Anyway, he's been working in the village near where the hangman's tree is for 70 or 80 years, and he knows for a fact that every time there is a sighting, there is some people coming along to the town to, shall we say, silence the full details of these occurrences, which in itself is rather suspicious, because generally paranormal sightings are disregarded. So the fact that this particular area is having details hidden, namely the fact that the hanged man is disemboweled and is definitely wearing male armour, is kind of unusual. Very unusual, in fact, and kind of concerning. Let me just have a bit of a drink here. Oh, that's a very nice rum. Anyway, on to page 2 of my notes. Priest, name redacted, provided following inventory. 1 vial blessed Dead Sea Sand, volume 2.75 grams, which I have right here. That's the first item he provided. 2, and if I can get it, there we go. 2, sanctified rosary, my own, with holy water and blessed oil and prayers of exorcism. Now, I'm not a religious type, and rosary in question is in this container. It's a hematite rosary, so double protection there. Although I'm not a religious sort, I do know there are weird things in the world, and the fact that he wanted to sanctify my rosary was kind of interesting. I don't know why I took it with me today, I just did. Onto the third note, if I can get the angle just right. Provided oil sanctified, and this is the third thing, provided oil sanctified in Vatican City as fuel for lighter, Zippo. This lighter, so yeah, probably a bit of a waste to use it for keeping my cigar going. But it's the quickest lighter I had. Then there is notable behaviour. seemed relieved that I wore Norse symbols and suggested the jackalope right here, ideal defense, protection. Go to page 3. Against what exactly? So, this brings me to the meat of this story, in fact, and I know this is rather slow paced because I'm going through notes here, but it leads me to believe that there is indeed something going on in that area of the New Forest that people want covered up. Now, these people seem to be government people, but from no recognisable branch or office that people are willing to mention. So either they're government or they're private contractors, and I don't know which it is, but it's kind of suspicious. The true details of this sighting are kind of hushed up, and that's something I find really, really suspicious, given the fact that, well, no one's ever been harmed by this apparition or whatever it happens to be. To my knowledge, I have asked the priest fully if he's ever heard of any malicious intent when he has been around the area, and he has not noticed any malicious intent. He just stated that the stuff he provided is a precaution, which I fully understand given the nature of these things. So I guess that means I have been informally recruited to investigate these occurrences in my area. Because this priest, he doesn't operate outside of the Hampshire, Dorset, Wiltshire area, and specifically this one church in Hampshire. Now, to get to my experience, and I'm going to refer to my notes again here. 1700, I arrived at the Hangman's Tree, and I'm going to have to dusk. Hangman's Tree, faint prints from hobnail boots, which is unusual because hobnail boots have not been used in decades, maybe even centuries. Around tree, faint sounds of execution. That was at 1700 hours around sunset. Now, I had heard that this begins around sunset, but it's not a very long event in point of fact. All told, it lasted around half an hour, 3/4 an hour at most. As I said, I'd left the area by 17:45 when the event ended. I got back home maybe just before 6. I was actually on my phone to nut job with a machete via Facebook Messenger while I was on my way home, and then once I got home I sent him some pictures of my notes. So yeah, kind of an unusual thing. No, I'm not going into a lot of details here because this is a recent event and I don't want to attract any unwanted attention. I know that sounds strange as I'm doing this story time, but I'm keeping it on purpose vague, despite the fact that I'm using my notes. 1715. Seated 100 yards away, apparitions appear. Hanged man sighted, disemboweled, as I stated earlier, which, as I said, I'm going to repeat this now. The legends about this hanged man, the local legends, the ones that get out to the public and are really well known, state that said hanged man is either a World War I soldier, and from what I've been able to find regarding this World War I soldier, that apparently doesn't exist, is he was a German soldier. But to my knowledge, that soldier does not exist. It is more than likely just a smokescreen from local government. Emphasis on the word smokescreen here, even though I am having a cigar. So, What does that actually tell us? The fact that a World War One soldier was used as a scapegoat, specifically a German soldier. Well, during World War One, yes, there was presence of a few German troops in the UK, very few and far between, not many reports of that. But what I think it is the government using a convenient scapegoat for the period of history we are talking about. And by the way, these sightings go back decades, go back to the 1800s even. And I think there's a reason that near this area you've got the ghost train. 1730. Event ends. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention on my last note, legends just state hanged. Yeah. Anyway, back to the correct time, which is 1730. Event ends. Conclusion. Strong geographic memory, possible ley line site. So what do I mean by strong geographic memory? Well, there are sites in the UK specifically, but all over the world, where events have been so traumatic and have been surrounded by so much upheaval that the land itself remembers these events and causes the event to be relived over and over again. Generally at specific times and specific dates. But this one appears to be one that is constantly relived every night after dark, so between sunset and morning. Now, I obviously don't have the time to do the full research and stay there throughout the entire night, as interesting as that might actually be, and as fun as that might be. I think I'll have a bit more on my rum. But the thing is, ley lines are well known. They're well talked about in popular media, there's books about them, and there's even books about paranormal stuff. And like I said, I think the priest was just being overcautious providing me with said items. But to me, from what I've seen today, I do not think this is a malicious or even harmful encounter that people are having. It is just a memory in the land of something so bad that happened many, many years ago, centuries ago. And I think the reason the government want to cover it up, they haven't done a very good job of it, to be honest, given that me, with minimal research, managed to find out the truth of it. I think the reason they have been trying to cover it up is because, well, let's just face it, back in the day the UK was an extremely religious country, and having word spread about things that cannot be explained by religion or by science in modern days, it's not exactly good for the image that everything's alright. There's no such thing as UFOs or the Loch Ness Monster or Wendigos, what have you. If you're going to North America, I mean Wendigos, so yeah. But what are my personal thoughts, aside from my notes, about this event? Well guys, I've experienced this event before, but from closer to the hangman's tree, so I heard the sounds, but I didn't see the apparitions. And the few times before that I had actually seen the apparitions myself, I was far enough away that I couldn't distinguish what the clothing was. We're talking 300-400 yards away at that point, in which case you just see what looks to be a mist very, very low to the ground, which is quite unnatural. Now, do I think I was provided with hunting supplies for something paranormal? In case of the Dead Sea salt, the blessed oil, and yes, even the sanctifying of my rosary, I do believe that the intention was the hunting of something. However, I am not the sort to dive in head first when I don't know the full facts. And given that how well details were covered up until my brief investigation of the area, given how well they were covered up by the local government, I don't mean the British government as a whole here, I just mean the local government of Hampshire. Because Hampshire has a lot of really religious communities. A lot of people will say that's not true. Believe me, it's true. It's just a matter of fact that these communities, they have an outward appearance of being normal, but they are extremely, extremely religious if you get close to the people that are part of them. As for the Hanged Man's Tree itself, I do believe that there is no hostile intent by whatever the apparitions are there. And I do believe it is just a geographic memory caused by a possible ley line site. The thing is, I do not think these legends are going to stop. I don't think these sightings are going to stop. And I think people are perhaps wrong in being afraid of them. Sure, it is a creepy occurrence, especially when you're close enough to see the full details of what is going on. Especially when you get close to the tree and see the imprints of hobnail boots. And by the way, back in the 1400s or even earlier than that, back to the times of the Norman invasion of the UK, which is 1066, hobnail boots were a standard piece of equipment that people would wear. And usually poorer people, but even soldiers and mercenaries wore them. Even knights, in point of fact, because hobnail boots were kind of the standard footwear back in the day. The standard hardware and footwear, I mean. So, from the boot prints that I saw, I can confirm that it is an early, maybe medieval sort of period event. And it is something so traumatic that there's no written history of it, there is only the memory in the land. As I said, I don't believe there's any hostile intent. I didn't sense anything out of the ordinary, and I've got a good sense of when to nope the fuck out somewhere. As you will have known from my previous story time, which occurred in another area of the New Forest. I knew when to nope out of that place straight away. Hoya! Whoo! That's a good shit. That's a good run. Whoo! God damn. I needed that. Anyway, I think that stories are still going to be covered up about the Hanged Man's Tree, but I want to put the facts out there. Or at least the facts I found out. Number one, it is no World War I soldier, like people state. I think the people that are saying a World War I soldier are either working for the local government trying to cover this shit up, or they are just buying into the local legends and are going there at times of day where you won't see anything. Because all the events I've heard about happen after dark. Right, so that kind of sums up the story in a way, but I want to mention something else here. The New Forest has a lot of paranormal activity in it, in certain areas. In fact, all of Dorset and Hampshire is known for varying degrees of paranormal activity, and some areas of Wiltshire as well, as I mentioned in a previous video. Now, what event do I think could have been traumatic enough for the land to remember this? Well, one thing comes to mind actually, and it's sort of a myth in the area, but one that is only mentioned in hushed whispers. And it does centre around 1066, the year of the Norman invasion to the UK. And it goes as follows. During the invasion in 1066, a battalion of Norman soldiers invaded the New Forest area, and specifically the area where these towns are. Again, I'm not naming the towns. And they went throughout these towns and villages, raping, pillaging, and one soldier, retired soldier, decided to take up arms to protect his loved ones and his community. The myth goes that this soldier failed to protect his family and was forced to watch as his wife and children were raped before his eyes. And this is just a myth, by the way, I'm not sure of the facts of this. And that he was then dragged to the hanged man's tree, as was his wife and children, where he was hung and they were forced to watch. Afterwards, it is said, and I've only found this out from some really old text, it is said that the wife and children of the hanged man were then hung beside him, and he was disemboweled before he was hung. The wife and children, as I said, were hung beside him, not on trees but on makeshift gallows, and the bodies were left there as an example to all who would dare go against the Norman invaders and all who would try to defend their land. Ah, damn, my cigar went out. Again, no, this isn't the right use for this, but that's better. So that's the myth of the area, the general myth. Do I think that myth is accurate? I think, in a way, given the fact that the land has remembered it, I think it could indeed be very, very accurate. However, and I'm going to say this now, I think there's something more going on. I don't think it is simply the fact that this soldier, this retired soldier who was hung, disemboweled and hung, I don't think this occurred just to make an example of him, because they'd already made an example out of him with the rape of his wife and children. And what is the point of hanging someone, disemboweling and hanging, when you've already made an example out of them? No, there's no point to that. What I think happened is, I think that, as the myth states, the wife and children were indeed raped. I do think that it would be accurate. It matches up with other reports of the Norman invasion that are written in history. But, as I said, I think there's more to it than that. What do I mean? Well, having made an example out of this man and his family, the other villages would have already fallen into line. They wouldn't have dared go up against the Normans at that point. So, what I think followed that event is maybe some of the other villagers tried to rise up against the Normans, tried to help this man and his family. And this is just conjecture here. And I think they tried to rise up, and rather than put the whole village down, because he would have been at the time a village elder, and back in this time period, soldiers would have been highly respected individuals, very wealthy individuals, in point of fact. They probably would have been village elders or something, so there is a possibility that was the case here. I think the reason they executed him was to defang the snake, so to speak. Because if they left him alive, yeah, he could have formed a militia from the nearby villages, quite reasonably. And that would have made invading the area more problematic than it had to be. So what I think happened, and the reason I think the land remembers this particular event, is I think they executed him in this gruesome manner by disemboweling and hanging him, and then doing likewise to his children and his wife, so his bloodline could not carry on. So basically, by taking him out, they remove his bloodline, and they also defang the person in the area who is most likely to rise up and form a militia against them using tactics like guerrilla warfare. Given the events in this area, given how often they happen, how exactly they happen, the time frame in which they happen is always after dark, and it can occur several times a night. Given this, I think this is actually proof of ley lines in the area, a possible ley line site, a possible unknown ley line site, and I think this is a geographic memory. I would not like to be the one tasked with cleansing the area, because I do not think it can be cleansed. This event is not the kind of event that the land would willingly forget. The land wants to make sure the people never forget this event, clearly. And that kind of makes sense from multiple levels. Now, as I said, this is just my take on it, but based on reports of other sites of Norman invasion and of the myths of the area. But that only explains the Hangman's Tree, doesn't it? It doesn't explain the ghost train in the area. And there are, in fact, many things that are not explained in that area because of this one event. If it's a ley line, an undiscovered ley line, that could just explain quite a bit. But I would hazard a guess that there is something much, much more to this. I think my take on this event is actually closer to the truth. I have studied quite a bit of history surrounding the Norman invasion of Britain in 1066, and it seems to me that the New Forest was one of the prime targets, because at that time in history it was home to a lot of settlements, a lot of trade routes, some roads from the Roman period. So that's what makes the most sense to me. Do I think the priest was right in arming me, preparing me for a hunt with certain items? Possibly, but I'm not going to go out on a hunt when I don't think it's something that should be hunted. And when it's ley line activity, you really cannot hunt it, you cannot purify it. Especially when it's an old memory like this. The land itself will not allow such an event to be forgotten. And quite honestly, I think the land, whatever you want to call the spirit that imbues the land, be it Gaia or whatever, I think the land is right. Because if history is any indicator, and it is, those who forget history are doomed, always doomed to repeat it. Now, I know I've gone off of my notes here, because obviously if I just gave you my thoughts based on my notes, it wouldn't be a very interesting video. But I think the truth of the story will out itself in time. Maybe this story will help with that, maybe it won't. In fact, I can guarantee you that even if this story does remain live when I post it, it will more than likely be suppressed by local governments, so you may not be able to view it in certain areas, such as the UK. If you can, I will be surprised. They may just think I'm a crackpot for discussing this. Hopefully that's the case, because if that's the case, the story will remain live. However, if they think I'm a credible threat, they may censor it. I don't think they'll pull any shit against me because, let's face it, I don't have far enough reach to even be worth considering. But I do think they would try and censor my story. It would certainly fall into line with the reports about this area and how the story has multiple variations. As I said, one of them, and I'll go into this now actually, one of them states that the hanged man was a World War I soldier. So, now that I've told you my thoughts on the story, let me tell you the popular legend of the hanged man's tree. So, where shall I begin? Well, first I'm going to begin with having another puff on my cigar, because that is a really tasty cigar. It is a Gurkha Extreme cigar for those of you who want to get one, and I highly recommend it. That is goddamn delicious. Just ashed it because I knew the ash was going to fall off. So, here is the popular myth and legend of the hanged man's tree of the New Forest. And it begins thusly. In the period of World War I, a German soldier was caught on UK soil and believed to be a spy. The local militias during this time period caught this man after he sought shelter with a farmer's wife, the farmer who had actually been drafted and sent off to fight on the front. This farmer's wife sheltered this German soldier, possibly a spy, and in short order he was found out because he did not speak English. And the farmer's wife, in her stupidity, sent this man to the local village to buy groceries. Now, he didn't speak English, and the moment he spoke to one of the townspeople, he was caught. He was then dragged off to what we know as the hanged man's tree by the townsfolk, by the villagers, whatever you want to call them, because we're talking a small town here, maybe 200-300 people at most. And I'm saying 200 or 300 people at most because that would constitute a village or a small town. It's a very blurry line there. This soldier was then, as I said, dragged to the hanged man's tree, where he was promptly hung by the people without a trial, without any justice, or any finding out why he was indeed there. And thus the apparition appears at the hanged man's tree. There's a huge problem with that story. And I'm going to tell you what that problem is right now. And it's one that not many people realise in point of fact. So, let me tell you. The hanged man's tree. I've already given you the groundwork of that. But the area where the hanged man's tree is quite far from the UK coast where any German soldier would have been able to make landfall. In addition to that, the area where the hangman's tree is not tactically viable. It is not of tactical importance. It is not of military importance. So, the fact that you'd have a German soldier in World War I being in this particular area is thinner than a wafer, thinner than wafer thin sliced ham. There is absolutely no reason why this popular myth of the hangman's tree is actually true. And the details are scant. I've just given you all the details. Pardon me. I've just given you all the details of the popular conjecture of the hangman's tree's myth. So, World War One soldier taking shelter with a farmer's wife who stupidly lets him go into the village, despite the fact he does not speak a word of English, to buy groceries, which at the time you would have been doing every couple of days or so. Let's be honest, every day, maybe 2 days, you would have been buying groceries. No refrigeration or shit. Maybe there was refrigeration at that time. I don't know. But basically primitive compared to today. So, first off, sending a non-English speaking German soldier into the local village where there's no foreign language speakers, so to speak, completely false. Doesn't happen. And let me just press a button here. Turn my remote off accidentally. Secondly, the fact that the villagers would take it upon themselves to hang a German soldier. Well, that has some basis in fact, I'll say that much. That does have basis in fact. In times of war, justice is put on hold in most cases. It's kill or be killed if you're in a war zone. I know that because I've had family who have actually been in active war zones, such as my grandfather on my mother's side, and my father, who was a United States Marine Corps personnel, sergeant actually, during Vietnam. So yes, I know that in times of war, atrocities happen and the law be damned, so to speak. But that's the popular myth of the hangman's tree. A World War I German soldier basically hanged by the townspeople in the area. Complete government cover-up, I think, because there is no tactical importance to that area. I'll just hold up my little skull glass here. There is no tactical importance to that area. There is nothing remotely important about that area, even today. Apart from the fact that there are some campsites nearby, and the area is lovely to go for a hike. And if you want to do bushcraft, yeah, you can do bushcraft there. People are few and far between, so you could probably get away with having more a knife out there. But as I stated, I don't think that's the truth of the matter. What I actually think is I think this is an unknown ley line site. And I think that the reason for the story of the hangman, especially the true story of the hangman, the story I have told you today, is because of a traumatic event during the period of the Norman invasion, 1066. And I think that's the end of it. It is just geographic memory. The land itself does not want people to forget. Such is the way many ley line sites work. There are memories locked into the land that will replay again and again and again. So my takeaway from this is there is no malicious intent with this site. It is not a site that can be purified, and nor is it a site that should be purified. It is merely a geographic memory, something that the land does not want people to forget about, and as such it should be treated with respect, and personally I give it all the respect it deserves, because history should not be forgotten. Anyway, that's all for now. If you like it, please subscribe, comment and share. And remember, don't get eaten, because there are things that go bump in the night.
I'm the Dracolope. bitch.